What if GPT behaves better when it knows it's being tested? Then how do you test what it will do with the real user? That's exactly the problem OpenAI is trying to solve. OpenAI has just published a paper on this in which they explain how they do it. And in this video, I will explain that. Every software is tested before it is released. Same is the case with AI models. Because people are communicating with these models, there are unimaginable number of scenarios. So companies like OpenAI try to do their best in order to keep the models safe. These models should not behave in ways that are dangerous or harmful. Here comes the tricky part. When the models are being tested, then they can often detect that they are being tested, and then they behave better. It's nearly the same as someone behaves best when they know they are being watched. So how to test a model without letting it know that it is being tested? This is the problem. And in the article, OpenAI actually says this themselves. Here, let me read from the article. If a model is only well behaved because it thinks it's being tested, how do we build confidence that it will behave safely once it learns it's being deployed? So basically, they are asking if the model behaves well when it is being tested, so how it can be trusted, how it will behave when it's actually released. So how do they fix this? What AI is now doing is to take the old communication from real users, from old models, and then deleting the answers and then inputting these questions as a normal chat. The model under test thinks it is just another normal chat. And then they let the model answer these questions. And from the answers, they detect how it will behave. OpenAI is calling this deployment simulation. So the model does not know it's being tested. So it behaves really in a way it will otherwise normally behave. And here's how they explain this actual method in the article. We take recent conversations from deployment, remove the original assistant response from the older model, and regenerate it with a candidate model to be released. This is helpful in two ways. One is to catch new bad behavior, and secondly, to detect how often the new model will misbehave. So they can say how often they expect this to happen. And later on, when the model is released, then they can check if their estimation was correct or not. So why is this method deployment simulation better? First thing is that previously the models were tested from questions which were written by someone sitting somewhere in a room. But people use ChatGPT in all the possible random ways which nobody can think of. So the benefit of these chats from real user is that the model is tested against real situations instead of being tested against some made up questions or some questions which were thought by someone. And the second thing is that because the model does not know it's being tested, so it cannot pretend to behave well. As it thinks it's just another normal chat, it is showing its real behavior, which it will show to any normal user. Both are solved by this. So the big question is, did it really caught something? Yes, it caught one new bad behavior that they hadn't seen before. So here's what happened. The model was asked to look up something, like a normal search. But instead of actually searching, it actually did the calculation itself. And then it told the user that it had searched for it. So the answer was correct, but it didn't tell the user how it got that. They call this calculator hacking. And in the article, this is how they describe it. Let me read it out. Calculator hacking is a form of reward hacking which involves the model using a browser tool as a while presenting the action as a search. So in simple words, the model took a shortcut but lied about it how it did it. That it did one thing but told you it did another thing. It's like asking someone to show their work on a math problem and they guess the answer and the answer is correct, but then they just write some fake steps to show how they got the answer. You got the right answer, so you are happy. but they weren't honest about how they got it. This is the whole point of the new method, because in the old way, they would have never caught this. But in the new way, the person who did this chat would have expected a normal search. They used chats from the people who agreed that their data can be used to improve models. And before using it, they removed all the private information and names so they can be identified. So it's anonymous. And it's a big number, around 1.3 million conversations over several months. So this is not a made up stuff. These are real everyday chats, random things which people ask ChatGPT every day. And then they go through all these chats and they check for different kinds of bad behavior. Is the model really doing what it is saying that it is doing? Or things like, is the model making up facts? Is it pretending some work which it didn't carry out? Is it acting too sure about something where it is not completely sure? So all these minute things are also being checked. And some of the things they check are quite surprising. For example, they also check if the model is encouraging someone to depend on it too much in an unhealthy way. So they are thinking a lot more about than just did it say something offensive. They also checked this if the model knows that it is being tested. With the old way of testing, the made up questions, the model nearly knew every time that it was being tested. But with this new way, the model was not able to detect if it was being tested. Thought it was just a normal chat, the same as real everyday. GP 5.2 labeled real production traffic as evaluation like 5.4% of the time and simulated traffic 5.1% of the time, while traditional evaluations such as SWE bench or monorepo bench, which are composed primarily of synthetic examples, were classified as evaluations almost 100% of the time. So if we see here the graphic, so we see that in real production chat, he thought 8% of the times that it is being evaluated. And in the deployment simulation, it thought 5.1% of the time that it is being evaluated. While in the old evaluation method, it was nearly able to detect 100% of the times that it was being evaluated. With this new way, it was basically the same as a real chat. The model just couldn't tell the difference. And this is really why it matters. If the model cannot detect that it's being tested, then this is the same behavior what I and you will get from it. Third, and what it does. And first, it's a good thing that AI is doing this, testing a model on real conversations in order to catch the bad behavior before it is being released and cause any harm or danger to anyone is a step in the right direction. It is important to catch the bad behavior before instead of after a release. But it also raises bigger questions that the whole thing depends on the model not knowing that it's being tested. And we just saw that these models can do one thing and tell you another thing. So it's fair to ask, can we ever be really sure? And maybe a bigger question, should one company be testing itself and then telling us that it's safe? Or should someone from the outside be checking too? And this is just not me wondering. This is a real debate happening right now. Back in 2024, Stanford, through their Institute for Human-Centered AI, put out an open letter signed by 350 researchers. And they were asking for independent outside testing of these models so that companies do not end up grading their own homework. There's also the Future of Life Institute. Every year since 2024, they put out an AI safety index, and it's judged by a panel of independent, respected AI scientists, including some of the most well-known names in the field. And one of their main points is exactly this, that the companies should not test themselves. So I want to leave this one with you. How do you think it should work? Should we trust the companies to test themselves, or should independent experts be involved before a model reaches millions of people? Tell me in the comments. I am genuinely curious what you think. So that's my breakdown of it. I will be covering more AI things like this, explained in plain language. So if you like that, then subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.